G'day, I'm Alister Christie from LearnDelphi.tv, and this video is on working with legacy code in Delphi. Firstly, a small bit about me. I've been programming in Delphi for quite some time now on a variety of products in a variety of industries, and most of them have involved some component of legacy software. In 2012, I was one of the first people to be invited into the Embarcadero Most Valuable Professional program because of my education efforts within the Delphi community. I have spoken at a number of conferences and user groups, both online and in person. I started making videos on using Delphi and posting them to my website in 2006. This is pre-YouTube, by the way, if you can remember such a time. And in 2011 I rebranded to the now familiar LearnDelphi.tv. I've created well in excess of 100 videos and on YouTube have over 3,000 subscribers and approaching 1 million views. I have also produced a number of commercial videos which you can purchase from the LearnDelphi.tv website. I'm going to assume that you've just taken over an existing legacy project. The first thing you want to do is determine that you've got all the source. There may be some third-party components that only come in compiled form, and if this is the case and you're moving to a newer version of Delphi, you might need to get new versions and/or purchase new licenses. However, I'm going to assume this is not the case. If it's not already, you'll want to get your source under version control. You have a lot of options here as to which version control system to use, but for most Delphi projects, the two common options are either Git or Subversion. Of the two, Subversion has better integration with Delphi and is a bit easier to understand. I also tend to use the Tortoise SVN Windows Explorer plugin and find that to be quite awesome. You'll also need to choose whether you want to host your repository locally or online with one of the many cloud version control providers. Once this is sorted out, you want to get to the situation where you can check out the source code to another computer and have it compile. You don't want to be in a situation where you make a change and can't undo it. If you're not able to get to this stage, you'll want to have some mechanism of backing up the computer. Another solution is to convert the computer to a virtual machine using VMware Converter or something similar. Then you can easily revert the entire machine if you make a mistake. The situation you want to be in is to be able to make changes to the source code with impunity and then quickly and easily back out if something goes wrong. Additionally, the ability to track changes and test and compare the original version with the current behavior is also very handy. You may find that there are a number of additional source files that are no longer referenced by any project. You'll want to find and delete these. If you need them back at some later date, you can recover them from your version control system, but usually if they are unreferenced, it probably means they were used in an older version of the application and were made redundant. These can be easily found by deleting all the compiled units, compiling all the projects, and then searching for any PAS files that have no corresponding DCU file. And it is a fairly easy exercise to write an application to do this. There may also be projects that are no longer required, and if you can, eliminate these also. The other thing you can do is search for any stray DFM files that have no corresponding PAS file, and again, delete these files. The thing to remember here is any code you can remove is code that you do not need to maintain. Where possible, you want to be able to use tools to find and eliminate problems within your project. Using static analysis is much faster than you reading through the code manually and will probably point out far more potential issues. Also, we want to be able to make manipulations to our source in bulk. For instance, if you need to replace a component on hundreds of forms, having a tool make these changes in seconds is much better than you taking a week to do it. Next, we're going to take a look at some of these tools in action. I have here a legacy application. What it is and does is a bit unimportant, so we're just going to ignore that fact. And the first tool we're going to look at is CNPEC. This is this menu item here. Now you can download CNPEC from cnpec.org, and it's the CN Wizards. And the first thing we're going to look at is the Users Cleaner. So when you add components to a form, the things get added to the Users section, and you delete that component, it doesn't get removed, or you were using a unit, but now it's no longer referenced, and these the uses clauses just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's a good idea to clean them out where possible, and doing that manually is pretty tricky. So we're going to use the Users Cleaner, and I'm going to say all units in the current project. And there's a number of tick boxes here. These are on by default. there's skip units using the initialization part. I'm going to turn that off, and using the register procedure. The register procedure is how components get registered to the component palette, and if you're doing this on a package that contains components, you'll probably want to skip those, but otherwise leave that. And skip units referred by component indirectly. This will be like the image on this button refers to, or might, I'm not sure, refers to a data module, and we wouldn't want to remove that that association, or remove that from the uses. It would still work, but there's some weird issues. And there's some other options which we won't go into, but there's units that get skipped. And yes, we're going to do all the files in the current project. Okay, and that brings up for us a list of things that we can clean. So in Unit 1, which is this one, we can see that there's a PageControlX which can be removed. That includes a registration section, or registration procedure, and the Property Analyzer settings includes initialization. So I'll just cancel that for now, and we'll have a look in the uses. And we'll see, here's this PageControlX, and I'll just go Control Enter on that to bring it up. And if we scroll down, we see that it contains this registration procedure which registers the PageControlX on the SR Components tab in the tool palette. This control is no longer being used, so I could remove that manually, but I won't. I'll let CNPEC do it for me. And if I just go Control Shift down, oops, from here, Control Shift down. We've also got the Property Analyzer settings, and we scroll down to see that there is an initialization and finalization section. So it just creates an INI file basically. So this just needs to be referenced somewhere in our application, and we see that it's listed here, which will probably mean it's in the project uses. So Property Analyzer settings, there it is. So that this initialization finalization will get executed regardless, so that can go as well. So let's run the uses cleaner again, and we'll go all units current project and process, and we'll try that again. Okay, and if we scroll down a bit, we'll also see this section here in the Chattels editor. We're using some of the XML units. This probably indicates that there's a TXML doc dropped on the form at some stage and it's been deleted and no longer required. PNG functions, that could be potentially an issue because of the including initialization, but I actually know that it's quite safe to remove that. And we can view a log. There's a list of the changes. If you need to refer back to, if something goes wrong, you can refer back to it and kind of put things back in and see what happens and what have you. And we'll just confirm by running application. Oh, and that splash screen didn't work, so possibly that those PNG functions were required. So that's pretty much the users cleaner. So let's move on to the next tool. The next tool I want to show you is the structural highlighting. Now these you can see the beginners in red, and they've got this red line coming down, and likewise with this if and begin in orange. So this shows you where the begin and end, so the blocks of codes start and finish, and what's contained in them. It makes it a lot easier to work with large blocks of code because you can sort of see the scope of variables and what have you, and scroll through. You'll see that the begin here is highlighted and the end here. Likewise, if I shuffle around, there's an if and then, it highlights the various structure. This makes it so much easier to work with code you're unfamiliar with, particularly if the layout is not similar. I can't actually edit this because it's a standard VCL thing, but if I come down and just find there's a evil with statement, and if I shift the begin to there, for instance, we see this little orange line all joining up, and there's no sort of ambiguity. And you know, if someone had unindented like something like that, it makes it a bit clearer as to how things are laid out, so that this client data set is associated with, obviously that insert because it's indented properly, but also that field by name because we can see that the orange line encompasses that. Also, if I click on value, we'll see that it's highlighting each instance of value, so you can see at a glance where that variable, or in this case parameter, is being used. We see that's only being used once. Style is used in these locations. There's I, and so on. Also note that exit is highlighted. That's showing the exit points of the function. So if there was an exception raised, it would also highlight that. And I think it also highlights break and continue. So that's pretty much the structural highlighting. It has a number of settings. So if we go into CNPEC, ID enhancement settings and source highlight enhancements, we can choose all different colors. Typically I prefer a darker background, something with a bit less contrast. It's easier on the eyes, and these colors don't really suit that. You have to sort of fiddle around with them until you get something that you like. But it's very, very helpful. And particularly when you're working with, as I said, with legacy code, you might have procedures that are 1,000 lines long, and this does help to sort of work out where you can break it up. The next tool in CNPEC, or CN Wizards, is the Property Corrector Wizard. Now, if I go in here, I've already done a bit of a search in the current project. If we look at options, in this case, T button, adjusting the height property wherever it equals 25, we want to prompt to make it 21. And basically we just do a search and it goes and finds this list. We're not actually interested in that property in this case. What we are interested in is on some forms it's using MS Sans Serif, which is a bitmap font. It sort of was what was used in the user interface of Windows 95, 98, around that. I think as Windows 2000 it got swapped to Homer, and I think more recently it's Seago UI. And because it's a bitmap font, it's a bit jagged on the edges, not very smooth, and yeah, you might be able to see it at this resolution, but yeah, it's a bit blocky, and we want to convert that to a vectored font such as to Homer. To do that, we go into the Property Corrector and go into Options. I'm going to first turn all of these other ones off and then add a new one. Oops, T control, the property is font.name, and we want where it equals MS Sans Serif, and we will prompt and modify it to Homer. And T control doesn't actually have a font name property, but it does exist in the sentence, so that's okay. I'm not sure how that one got in there, but okay. And now if we do a search, we get quite a few instances of MS Sans Serif. If we were to track those down manually, it would be a bit of a pain. You could also do a search and replace in the DFM files, which we might look at later. But if I just confirm all those, that's that done, and our Chattels editor is now to Homer, and we're on a vectored font. The property corrector is quite powerful. It also, likewise with the Users Analyzer, you can do it across a project group. So if you have more than one project in a group, you can sort of do it in bulk across many projects. The next tool we're going to have a look at is PayScale Analyzer, this product here, which you can get from Beganza.com. It's a really powerful static code analysis application, and it's commercial, so you have to pay for it. It's well worth getting. I find it very useful. I haven't used the PayScale browser, but the PayScale Analyzer is excellent. Icarus is a users list analyzer, which is included in PayScale Analyzer, but if you don't want to fork out any money, then Icarus is well worth grabbing as well. So what we're going to do is start a new project and go and pick our our copy of the Property Analyzer tool, and there are lots of options here, but actually everything, all the default settings are just fine for what we're interested in. And we're just going to analyze the main file and anything directly referenced by it. Sometimes rearranging the order of the report is useful, but I won't worry about that for now. And we can actually run the analysis. And I'll just call it test. And here we have a lot of reports on our application. So if we just take a look at some of these, we've got no strong warnings, which is nice, but we've got quite a few warnings. For instance, if we have a look at interface identifiers that are used but not outside of unit, so in this F channels editor is a form variable, but it's not actually used outside the unit, so we could actually shift it into the implementation section, which if we go to our project, is our channels editor, which we were looking at earlier. I can highlight that variable and shuffle it down here, and that's decreased sort of the visible surface area of this unit, which means it's a bit easier to maintain. There's less ways of modifying things, and it's actually only used in this function, so we can shift it there to be a local variable. So that's a small enhancement, but every little bit helps. And okay, so let's go back, and there's a whole bunch more of these we could go through and work through these. So Klatt Interface to class identifiers that are sort of public but not used outside of unit. Okay, we've got 20 of them. So this is book value in TDM Data. So if we go back to our project, to DM Data, we see we've got book value here. I can actually take this and shuffle it up to there. So again, we're making less stuff visible. This actually does actually make projects a lot easier to maintain. One or two of these changing makes a little difference, but if you can do hundreds or thousands of such changes, it does make things a lot simpler. And couple that with cleaning up the uses, it actually makes the IDE more responsive because there's less code that it needs to parse, and less to show in terms of code insight and things like that. So it does actually, if you've got a huge project, it can speed up the IDE quite a bit. So let's go back now. So optimizations. So missing const. This is quite handy. Well, it makes a little difference really, but it does actually make your units, your functions and procedures and methods and things a little bit more explanatory as to what happens in their contents. And also passing const rather than as a value parameter is slightly faster. And I can go through all of these, but it's a bit pointless. I will go down to the uses section though, if I can find it. There it is. And the one thing that PayScale Analyzer does, this little arrow here, is indicating that earnings can be shifted from the interface to the implementation. So if I copy that, and we see earnings there, I can delete that and shift it to there. And if we scroll further through, we'll see in this one it reckons PyData is actually unnecessary. So if we go back to our channels editor, So it reckons PyData is not important at all. But if we have a look, we see that is actually referencing the DM data there, which is the DM data is the data module in that PyData unit. And removing that reference can actually cause you a little bit of grief at times, but it wouldn't actually stop your application from compiling. But I'd recommend leaving it there in that case. So the use is cleaner in that tick box. If we go back to CNPEC, that's why it wasn't found, because we've got this units referred by a component indirectly. So there's lots more in the Users Analyzer, the PageScale Analyzer. For instance, tab order and stuff like that. So there might be an issue with the tab order on some controls, and it'll kind of point potential issues out to you. And that's pretty much all we're going to cover of PageScale Analyzer. Next up, we want to have a look at the QA metrics and audits. You need Delphi, I think, Enterprise or Architect to get these options. And let's start with metrics. And it has a whole bunch of things. Let's just look at cyclomatic complexity, for instance, which is abbreviated to CC. And it gives you a description of it and sort of some information, things you can adjust. And go start, and it builds the application and does a bunch of analysis on that. And let me just undock that, make that somewhat bigger. We can see, if you see, look at the CC column, this is our cyclomatic complexity, and we can see in PyData it's got a complexity of 64, which maybe that's quite high. So let's expand that out. And come back down and find our PyData, and looking at the cyclomatic complexity. So it's our, pretty much all comes from our TDM Data class, which is unsurprising. And we see, oh, there's one that's got quite a high level of complexity. And if we double click on it, it in theory takes us to the unit. Let's just dock that down the bottom. In theory, it's meant to take you to the location. It does in previous versions. But if I just press an arrow key, so it'll be this procedure here that's the complicated one. So it's a calculate fields, and we see it is quite long. And maybe we want to break that up into some smaller procedures to reduce the cyclomatic complexity of this method. And there's lots of sort of numbers you can play with, and yeah, I don't find them particularly exciting. I think they're better tools for analysis, and I find the interface a bit awkward. But we can also have a quick look at the audits, and there are lots and lots of things in here. Design flaws. I haven't really gone through these in a particularly great detail. It has some stuff for finding duplicate code, which is quite handy, and I've used that in the past. So, for instance, you could turn off everything but duplicate code. So let's run that, and we see we've got a bunch of things. Let's expand out the description. So expression value not used. Okay, I haven't actually gone through these. Maybe null. So a bunch of okay, multiple statements on one line. That might be bad. Okay, let's docu. So we're just declaring multiple things in a single line. Maybe we want to split that out like that, or like so. If you actually care about that wording, I don't particularly in this instance. Lots of sort of naming conventions that are broken, so not PageCale case, which is what typically is used in Delphi. Not overly concerned about those. Place statement and block. So basically saying some people prefer that all if statements have a begin end around them. I actually don't care. I prefer the brevity that having it without. But anyway, so that's sort of the audits and metrics in Delphi. I'm not overly keen on them, but I do run them occasionally, and they do occasionally pick up some useful stuff. And it's definitely worth playing with them. The next tool we're going to have a look at is Source Monitor. You can get that from the Campwood software website, and it's completely free. It supports Delphi and a bunch of other languages, and if you find it useful, I'd encourage you to give them a small donation. I think this is quite an awesome project, particularly that it's free. Basically, it allows you to monitor the sort of many statistics about your source code over time, and gives you lots of metrics. So we'll create a new project, a Delphi project, create a new project and throw it in temp. And then we need to select our source files. So let's go in and into grab the copy. Now you have an option for all subdirectories, no subdirectories, or selected. Let's just grab selected, and we can expand that out and pick the directories. For instance, I wouldn't want the deprecated folder that contains a bunch of PAS files that are no longer required, but in this case we want no subdirectories, so that's nice and easy to select. Some more options, we're okay with those, and we'll go with the new source monitor format, which is good, and we'll call our first checkpoint baseline. That's fine. I usually use the repository revision numbers in there, and do a check-in sort of every once in a while. Not with every check-in, but whenever there's sort of a major change, I'll update it. And so that's created us a new checkpoint, and it's got lots of information about complexity, average complexity. That's kind of the one I like to keep an eye on, and try and keep that number low. So 2.17 is pretty low. We can display a caveat chart and see that our number of variables per class is a bit high, but that's typical of Delphi projects anyway, or Delphi UI projects, because forms tend to have lots of controls on them, and that sort of pushes that number up. So that's okay. I can double click and it brings up the statistics for all the units, and we can again look at average complexity. So 5.25, that might sound a little bit high, so we go in and view the method metrics. You see that maybe that one's a bit complicated or something. I don't know. But the average complexity is quite high because there's not a lot of source anyway. So we've got a lot of sort of source code in that one. 482 statements, quite high complexity. You can view some information about that unit, display the method metrics again, and So the complexity, so that one's quite high complexity. I can bring that up, and we can see it's quite a large large method, and it's got a lot of if statements, which is what kind of pushes up the the complexity. Oops, didn't mean to close that. Let's bring that back up, and let's open a older project. And it's including, so actually don't want that one, but all the others, or those. Old, and so on. So go OK, and then we can compare our codes, our baseline. So we've actually got less code, less units, and the complexity's gone down, so it's possibly a good sign. So over time you'd create a large number of checkpoints, probably using your revision numbers in SVN or Git or whatever you're using to indicate the checkpoint name, and you'll be able to produce graphs. If I can find it, we need to select more than one. Chart project metrics. So we can see the number of local subroutines has gone down from 8 down to 4, and I can use the page up and page down to sort of look at how things have gone. This is not particularly interesting. I've only got 2 points. Likely you'll get over time you'll have lots, and they'll go up and down. Hopefully many of them will go down in terms of the complexity. Number of lines of code probably go up, and so on. So it's pretty cool. It tells you lots and lots about your project, and it gives you an indication as to whether you're making progress or not, which is very helpful. So that's probably all I need to talk about with regards to Source Monitor. The next tool we're going to have a look at is GExperts, which is this menu here. It's another IDE plugin, and you can get it from geexperts.org. Again, like CNPEC, it contains lots and lots of useful things. We're only going to have a look at one today, which is the replace components option here. So what I'm actually going to do is throw down a bunch of buttons and line them up like so, and oops, align left sides and space equally. So here we've got 6 buttons, and we might have buttons across a large number of projects or a large number of forms within our project, and we want to convert all these buttons, T buttons, to maybe you want to convert them to CX buttons if you've got Dev Express or something like that, but we're going to convert them to bit buttons because it's a standard Delphi control. You probably wouldn't want to do that because bit button is a bit weird in some respects. So we can go replace components and replace T button with T bit button. Now we might want to change some properties at the same time, and I've already got this set up. So in fact I'll delete that and re-add it. So these are in fact it's easiest if I just explain it as I go. Create a group temp. Our source component is T button, and let's actually go width. Destination component. And we just want to assign a default value, and we'll make the width 120, so quite wide. Actually had that around the wrong way. So we want width as in our destination. Okay. So, and we're going to say on the current form, or we could go across the entire project, but we've only got one form on the project, so that's fine. And we go OK, and we see these are the in fact component renaming that's slightly different, but we see that that's updated all our buttons. They're now a T-bit button, and it adjusted the width of each of them. and of course we can run that. And it indeed works as expected. Now there's this, as I said, there's lots to GExperts, and there's a bunch of stuff in there that is well worth learning how to use and can save you quite a bit of time. It's worth noting that some of the shortcuts between GExperts and CNPEC do conflict. In fact, I know some of them conflict with some of the Delphi standard Delphi ones in the later versions. So you might want to need to configure some of the shortcuts. But anyway, I digress. So that's GExperts. It's well worth having a play with anyway. There are some additional Delphi-specific tools that I've not yet properly tested, and I've listed 3 here. There are probably others. Feel free to Google them and try them out. I have a few other things that I need to mention, but don't have time to go into in detail. The first is refactoring. This is the art of manipulating code without changing its behavior. There are very specific rules about how to go about this so as not to break your code. This skill is extremely useful when you are working with legacy code, and I would encourage you to read Martin Fowler's excellent book on refactoring. There are some tools that can help you to do this automatically. Delphi's built-in refactoring tools, which are pretty good but unstable in some versions of Delphi. Model Maker Code Explorer is an awesome Delphi plugin that offers many productivity enhancements, and Castalia, another plugin which has been recently acquired by Embarcadero. The other book, Working Effectively with Legacy Code by Michael C. Feathers, is also worth reading. It could also be equally called Refactoring to Tests, which brings me to testing. Ideally, you would want to be able to make a change to your application, then run some quick automated tests to confirm nothing is broken, and then move on to the next change. This is normally done using unit tests. However, these are usually very hard to retrofit to an existing application, hence the aforementioned Working Effectively with Legacy Code book. I've mentioned one product here, Test Complete, which allows you to run scripts against your compiled application and validate the application is in a particular state, for example, that an edit box contains a specific value. This can be very useful when you are changing the internal plumbing of your application, but not its user interface. We've covered a lot in this video, but in reality we've barely scratched the surface of working with legacy projects. Just to briefly recap, make sure you're using some form of version control, as you want to be aggressive with some of your changes. Usually the fastest way to find out how something works is to break it. Get rid of any source code that's not required. You don't want to spend any time analyzing or thinking about code that's not even used. Not that I've really mentioned it so far, but you want to separate your data, business, and presentation logic in your application into separate layers. This might be using techniques such as MVC or MVVM. And lastly, you want to have some sort of automated testing for your application. I will make a number of links available, and you'll be able to find these on my website, learndelphi.tv. Read the notes for movie 109. I'm Alister Christie. Thanks for watching this video on working with legacy code.